it. Rabbi Blau just mentioned how similar the Rebbe is to Rashbi. And to me, the thing that I think of is Rashbi had no shaykhs to any of the people of his generation. When I say I have no shaykhs, not that he didn't care about them. There was no erech klal between the greatness of the Maila of Rashbi and the people around him. His greatness in Torah, his greatness in Avodah, his greatness in Tekes Nalakus, his greatness in revealing Pimis HaTorah. And everyone's his friend. Everybody can get to Rashbi. It's interesting. I once in a while I would stand in 770, and 770 would be packed. It would be 6,000 people on a Simchas Torah 7, and the Rebbe swings in his hand, and everyone is jumping up and down. You look around. Now, in that crowd, you have Chassidish Yidden, who learn Chassidus, who daven, who do the things that the Rebbe said people should do, whose lives are dedicated to living the way the Rebbe wants people to live. And there are many people in that crowd that are not in that space. In the Polish Welt, give me half a second. I'm sorry, in the Polish Welt, there was a musik by Rebbes that was called Shkutzim. When a Rebbe starts out, and Beklau, the truth is, you don't really inherit that Rebbeship. It's not like a business or a house. A good yid, a tzaddik, passes away, and his son is Mamalim Mekayim Kache. He got to earn his own stripes. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. But a good yid who succeeds in corralling, gathering around him a critical mass, in other words, enough people to create a community, he does it on his own. And I really believe that. I believe all the gezes, all the successful dynasties, nobody inherits. You don't inherit. Inheriting works to get the job. Inheriting works that they'll give you a certain aliyah. But people who come to you, every good yid collects his own. And in other words, it's his own credibility. So when a good yid starts out, so he has the Gebarene, what he inherited from his ancestors, and then he has what he builds. And in the beginning, the Chassidus is about Avodas Hashem. It's about, what does that Rebbe stand for? Rebbes don't stand for Kigel and Kishke. They certainly don't stand for Wildkeit and all kinds of Mishigassen that could even be Hepech HaTeira and certainly Hepech HaChasidus. They stand for Avodas Hashem, and they collect a following of people who love them, who learn from them, and so on. But as time passes, I don't know what the right word is, being connected to that, the Rebbe becomes cool. And I know it's a very bad word, but that's what happens. The idea that there's this tzaddik, who's a Baruch HaKodesh and a Baal Moifis, and I suppose you could say above all else, he's an unconditional Oyev Yisrael, draws to the tzaddik people who, what the tzaddik is teaching, and what the tzaddik is saying to do, and where the tzaddik is motivated to have a very small shaykhs, to the davening, and to the learning, and to the Avodas Hashem, and to the Bidud Amidas, and to the Iskafia, and to the Sur Meirah, and to the Aseitev. But they're drawn to this tzaddik because he's a tzaddik. So this is a tradition. You go back into the Polish circles and earlier generations. I heard this from a Polish. Every Rebbe, the sign that you made it as a Rebbe was you had shkutzim. What's that shkutzim? Oisvarfs. They were not. You weren't proud. They were not great chassidim, but they loved this tzaddik. They loved this Rebbe to the point that they would give their life for him, and they would certainly give your life if you dared say a bad word. And the bigger the Rebbe, the more the shkutzim. I heard from my rabbi, Rabbi Reuben, that there was two Gutta Yidden, two Rebbes. I forgot which two, but I'm not going to say names, even though I think I remember, but I don't remember for sure. Where the shkutzim of one Gutta Yid really, really embarrassed the other Rebbe. Two Rebbes in Poland before the war. where one of these Rebbes, a big tzaddik, a moidig, a great tzaddik, and God's on the Skutzim, he had his chevre, who their whole Yiddishkeit was their connection to this tzaddik. And they felt that this other Rebbe is no good, and he's not holy, and he's a phony, and he's a threat to their Rebbe. So they did something really amazing. When the Rebbe of these Skutzim heard about it, so he said to the other Rebbe, he goes, they schicken bet mechila. I'm going to send it that they should apologize. So the second Rebbe said to the first Rebbe, I don't need to see your Skutzim. So you look at this, and you see a dilution, a diminishing of a person. A person comes into the world with a mission, and when he starts out, I believe this to be true, even though a lot of people would disagree with me. For the most part, he starts out with a very small chavra. Every Rebbe, even from the biggest Chassidus, who inherited from his father thousands of Chassidim, he's going to have to earn it. Every Gota Yid earns, every Rebbe earns his place as a Nosib Yisrael, as a Gadol Yisrael. I'm trying to use words that are pativ, because there's different madregas in this. Over time, he reaches critical mass, and then he has the raya that a Rebbe made it is that he has shkutzim, that he has around him chevre, that the only Yiddishkeit they have is the Rebbe, shkutzim, yeah. And the bigger the Rebbe, the more the shkutzim. You know the success of a Rebbe by the shkutzim, even though you could make the case who needs them, even though you can make the case that they give the Rebbe a bad name, even though you can make the case that the Rebbe will be better off without them, but it's not that way. Because these shkutzim are creations of the Eibishter, and they're part of the Jewish people, and the Eibishter desperately wants them, and the Rosh Yeshivas have nothing to say to these people. The Rabbanim have nothing to say to these people, because they have nothing in common with them. The Rebbe, who's shaloi be'erech higher than the Rosh Yeshivas and the Rabbanim and the other Klei Kodesh, the Shkutzim and the Rebbe they get together, they have a kinship. I saw once, there's a Yid who's now passed away, who really was a special chassid, and he deserves that he should be immortalized. His name is Chanech Glitzenstein. You may not even have heard the name. Glitzenstein made the Sefer that told us. He later made the Eitzah Sipurei Chabad. Chanech Glitzenstein was a emes Chassidish Yid. He was a Talmud, I think, even from Rabbi Paltiel, I think. And he was an Edom of Avram Parish. He was very talented, and he was very Chassidish. He had very big problems with the historians who used to worry more about what the history books say than what the Frierdiker Rebbe Sicha say. He was that kind of a person. He was a Pnimis Dekerid. He did a lot of things for Lubavitch. So Chanech Glitzenstein got an instruction from the Rebbe in the 1950s, like a miftzah, to reach out to the Seifrim in Israel, to the writers in Israel, which he did. And he wrote about it in Kfar Chabad. This goes back probably before I was married, or when I had time to read Kfar Chabad. And the articles were unbelievably compelling. Israel became a nation. They created, I don't know what words to use here also. The so-called state of Israel was created, and then they had denkers, Anshe Machshava, brilliant men, who all, or Rubam Kakulam, came from homes, had good learning, very, very bright, and they were creating the hashkafa of the modern state of Israel. One of them would say, by the end of the decade, when Israel was 10 years old, now Israel is now how old? 70 years old, yeah. At the end of the decade, we wanted to create a nation of Apikursim, and we created a nation of Burim. And the Rebbe wanted to get to these guys, to these Seifrim, to these people who were the Denkers. They were creating the hashkafa of this new state, and Glitzenstein was involved in this, and he had personal relationships with many of them. And some of them wrote to the Rebbe. One of them actually, Poshet, became a Shemetero Mitzvah. One of them, Poshet, became Frum B'Poyel. The Rebbe had a great hashpah on these people, and Rabbi Glitzenstein, I'm going to say Chanech, he's an Elam Emes at the Mezich Michael Zayin, was the person to create this kesher. Anyway, so one of the stories that was written in the Kfar Chabad was, they would come to Kfar Chabad, Yitzchak Kislev. You're talking now the 50s, the 60s, was a different time. Today nobody drinks. They said l'chaim. And not only the Chassidim said l'chaim, the Seifrim said l'chaim. Oh no, v'medaf, they said l'chaim v'medaf to sein. And they would really farbrengen, they would really have a good time, they'd really be uplifted. And the one of the quotes which sort of stands out in my mind was that one of these writers, who was officially an apokedus, Alavayva Mashiach, didn't believe in the Eibishter, didn't believe in Teda, didn't believe in Meshach Rebbe, didn't believe in Gunisht, said to one of the Anash who was hanging around with him, he says, we have to make a bridge direct between us Apakursim and you Chabad. We speak the same language. If you take all the middlemen out, in other words, this was people who were so far. They were very intelligent, but their brains were in a terrible space. And they related to the Rebbe, really, in a very, very direct way. And again, it's not the pshat that because a tzaddik, because the Rebbe has around him shkutzim, so the chassidus become a sheged chassidus. Versteht a chassid is a chassid the way a chassid is supposed to be. He davens and he learns and he does what the Rebbe says above all else. But one of the simonim of the fanem of a Rebbe is the outer rim, and the outer rim is what we call the shkutzim. And the funny thing is that the bigger the tzaddik, the more the shkutzim. The bigger the tzaddik, the more the shkutzim. And Pliny ben Pliny and Pliny Almoini and Pliny Shalmoini screams, this is a terrible Rebbe, it's a terrible chassidus. Look what kind of chevre he has around him. And he doesn't begin to understand. It's not the pshat, look what kind of chevre he has around him. It's look what kind of chevre he has around him also. Versteht sich, he has chassidim who learn and daven of the Eibishter, but his ability to reach the neshama of a yid has been made so powerful that he reaches a yid that you want nothing to do with. You don't want him in your shul, you don't want him on your street, you want to make believe he doesn't exist. I always tell you the same quote. I heard this from a wise person years and years ago. When you turn your back on somebody, they don't disappear. When you make believe someone is not there, they don't go away, they're there. The ultimate attractor of shkutzim, and forgive me for saying this, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rashbi, again, I was never in Miron Lag Baomer, so I don't know, but what I hear, you have Yidden who are not, they're not Yerushalayim Yidden with pious who learn Kabbalah at 12 o'clock at night and go to mikveh 4 times a day, and they're always getting machshava de b'ramaisa. You have those kinds of people too. But Rashbi draws every Jew. And every Jew somehow finds that him and Rashbi are buddies. What the Yid doesn't understand is he has more in common with Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar than he has with Rashbi. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Akiva said to Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Akiva, I think it's a Yerushalmi, but the Rebbe used to quote the Gemara Stam as a Dayach Shani Ubeirecha Makirim Kechacha. Be happy that the Eibishter knows who you are, and I know, that's enough, that's all you're going to get. At the Eibishter weiß, und ich weiß, because more than Payochel, the Eibishter, what Rabbi Akiva know who Rashbi is, what keiner nicht wissen. So Rabbi Akiva says, you have your mission, and nobody is going to be Yeled L'Seif Daitecha, nobody is going to know who Rabbi Shimon is, the Eibishter knows, and I know, and I'll go do your job. And if you think about Lag Baomer is a holiday that makes no sense. B'chlal, any holiday which has to do with Kabbalah and Pnimis Hateh doesn't make any sense. They make no sense. He was a Jew who passed away in the middle of saying Torah. He passed away in the middle of saying Torah. His neshama was Eila B'Sara Hashemayim, like the Mittler Rebbe. And I was telling people yesterday the story, and as I'm telling the story itself is so mind-blowing. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had an idre. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I apologize. He had an idre, a cheder. In the cheder there were 10 chevre. 10 chevre. And if you look it's in Pashas Nosei, in Idre Rabbah, it says the names of these 10 chevre. And in the Nitzutzei, in one of the Mefarshim, it says, Nitzutzei Zoyar, Pirush HaRachav, it says that these 10 people represent the 10 Sfiras. And it says which one is which. Rabbi Shimon is one of the 10, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon is one of the 10, Rabbi Abba is one of the 10. It says their names, and each one was one of the Sfiras. Rashbi gathers together his 10 chevre. He starts teaching Pnimiyas HaTorah. And as he's teaching Pnimiyas HaTorah, 3 of them, they do another Vanaviyu. 3 of them. They just check out. 3 Tlosas Sabish and Mesabit, the historians say, Rabbi Shimei Echad Megalagav and Seidis HaTorah, and 3 of them were Eile B'Sora HaShamayim. Now, we don't understand what that means, and rather we have Kashis, Nadav and Aviyu was considered an Aveda, why it wasn't considered an Aveda for them, and there's Mamadi Chasidus that explain it. Bottom line was 3 Yidden who were in such a high level that the hearing of Torah, Pnimiyas HaTorah, and the Oira Torah, and the Tainug of the Torah, Poshet, it was Neshikin, like you have in Chumash with Miriam and Aaron and Moshe, the Neshama, the Guf didn't die, the Neshama was pulled out of the Guf. Okay? It's a story. Yeah? Problem is, the story goes on for like 50 pages. But 49.5 pages is Kabbalah that nobody understands. The first few words in the middle, last few words at the end, or wherever the story is in that Sipur, if the Maisa that lost us have, comes again one day, Rabbi Shimei Echad calls the other guys. There's 6 left, with him is 7, yeah? He said, let's do this again. Why? He tells them straight. Because my neshama is going to be Eile B'Sara HaShamayim through Limud Pnimiyas HaTorah. And they gather. They come, and they sit, and Rashbi talks for 10 blot. It's so much. And then at the end of the story, Mamish, last half a page, it describes how he was nostalgic. Now you tell me what we have in common with such a man. You tell me what we have in common with such a man. And everybody except the Misnagdim celebrates Lag Baomer. And the Misnagdim, it's not that they don't celebrate. They decided that in order to be Misnagdim, they have to un-Lag Baomer themselves, and they call it Bittul Teira. I'm all hidden. Lag Baomer, the Gra was a Greis Makubal. Even Lag Baomer, even Misnagdim Lag Baomer. And by the way, it's not the pshat that this has been going on for 2,000 years. Before the Arizal, we didn't even know the date. The Arizal was the one who was Megala, or somebody around that time, that is the Yortzat of Rashbi. And the so-called historians, the Balei Nigle, the Historichikis, are screaming that it's a Baba Maisa. The only part of it that's not a Baba Maisa is that whatever it is, hundreds of thousands of Yidden gather in Miron, and they make a fire, and they say, that's real. What do these people have in common with Rashbi? They don't have a clue. Not of a den. They have an neshama. And the neshama, again, I'm using this expression, and I don't necessarily mean it literally, but it makes the point. It's bebchinas shkutzim, they're not Kreisa mentioned. Some of them are not even frum. We're not so frum and not frum. But they're not Yidden, they're not Rabbi Shazelik Margolis, you understand? They're not sitting in Yerushalayim, Yomam v'Laylam, being nizir and machshava dibur u'maiseh, and measuring every minute of sleep and every piece of bread, and oisik and Seidis HaTorah. You're not talking about such people. There are such people too. But there's a achuz choshuv, maybe an achuz godel, maybe it's even more than half, of Pashta Yidden, and Yidden that are perhaps even less than the Madrega that you would call Pashta Yidden, who Lag Baomer daf mazayin Miron. Why? They don't know why, but they know Lag Baomer Miron. Why? The neshama tzitzia here. The neshama schleps them there. That's that's Rashbi. And that's the Rebbe, like Rabbi Blau was saying before I started to talk. The idea that because he's a bigger tzaddik, he has bigger shkutz. Bigger shkutz. When Yena schreit, look at this Rebbe. He's corrupt. He's a failure as a Rebbe. Look what he's gathered around himself. I always think in the Tanakh, you have a mice with Yiftach HaGeladi. Yiftach was kicked out of his family. They didn't like him. And he had Anoshim Reikim, Oisvarvs. His whole chevre was a bunch of shkutzim. And then they had trouble, and they came running to Yiftach and say, come and help us. And Yiftach says, I should help you. You kicked me out. If you've ever read the Haftarah of Yiftach, it's in Sefer Shoftim. He was not so respected in Beis Aviv. And they threw him out of the house. And you had a Nashim Reikim, a bunch of shkutzim. Why? Because he was a tzaddik. And because he was a tzaddik, these are Nashim Reikim, it's not the pshat they understood him. But they had something in common with him. And again, to use practical basis, he had so much Avas Yisrael that they were welcome in his house, they were welcome in his chabur, they were welcome in his seviva, they were welcome in his environment. And to me, that's like Baomer. The biggest tzaddik. He's the father of Pnimiyas HaTorah. He's the father of Pnimiyas HaTorah. He's the father of Kabbalah. Even though Kabbalah comes from Moshe Rabbeinu, but the way it's nishtal shalamata, it happens through people. Just like the Tanakh, the Chumash. It's called Teiras Moshe, even though it's Teiras Neshal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's his Sefer. Even though Sefer Divrei Hayomim is one of the Sefer Kodesh, but it's considered the family, the Sefer of David HaMelech's Mishpacha, of Malchus Yehuda. The Zohar is Ashbiz. And who understands Zohar? Who even understands what there is to understand in Zohar? Zohar is easy to read, by the way. It's easier to read Zohar than it is to read Kisvei Arizal. It is. It may be easier to read Zohar than to read a Maimon Chassidus. But what do you see in Isaiah? What do we understand in Isaiah? And everybody has a connection to Rashbi. It's a remarkable thing. And I think the fact that it's celebrated by fire, this is another Mishagas. Jews find a way, my kids were saying to me last night, Yidden find a way to celebrate. To every Mishagas in the world we got a day for. Every Mishagas in the world we made holy. So if you're a pyromaniac, your Yom Tif is Lag Baomer. Everybody, the Yidden found a way to make a Yom Tif out of every Mishagas. You like making fires, there's a day for you. Just wait till Lag Baomer, make as big a fire as you want. Just make sure you don't burn the house down and you don't call the fire department because mach on fire. What are you making fires for? Because the fire is oil. Based on in Hayem Yem, Kishemamidim Panos Miskaptim. Arum fire kleit man sagt. As they have in the other. Around fire people collect. And this is what Rashbi is. Rashbi is a fire. He lived 2,000 years ago. And we relate to him and we have a shaykhis to him. And what he is somehow resonates with all of us. It really does. Because it's a koyach eliki atzmi. It's such a great power that it extends all the way to the Shkutim in the 21st century. This is how I see it. That's how I understand it. Which I love to tell. I tell it all the time. That it's a story. It's a maisa. That in Tafresh Ayin Ches in 1918, 102 years ago, they found the Gniza Achirsonis. I don't know if you are familiar with this parsha, but if you're interested in reading about it and you have never read about it, you could get the Hatomim. There's a 2-volume set called Hatomim. In the back, I have it in one book. In the back of the Hatomim, at the back of the Hatomim, there is a letter from the Rebbe, which explains Ba'ariches, the Gniza. It's like 5 or 6 pages long. It's an extra. I don't even know if the letter's Nigris Kaddish, but it's a quite long letter. I can't see why not, but I don't remember seeing it in Nigris Kaddish, where the Rebbe defends the Gniza. And some Yid who had written Sfarim on Chabad, whatever it is, tell this Chabad of Nederam, or the letters of the Alter Rebbe, Igaz Balatanya, he came out against the Gniza, and the Rebbe defends it. The Rebbe writes a long letter defending the Gniza Chasanas. They found in a government archive in the Ukraine hundreds of letters from the Baal Shem Tov's Rebbes, from the Baal Shem Tov, Tzaddik in the Storim, the Chavraya Tzaddik in the Storim, from the Mezritcher Maggid, and Mezritcher Maggid's Chavedim, Maggid's Talmidim. It's an incredible treasure. And it's clear that they're copies. It's clear. Why? The paper is all the same, the handwriting is all the same, the ink is all the same. It's clear that it's copies. And there were certain mistakes because it was copied in haste. And then they did the chemical test and they proved that the paper is from the times of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Chachamim came out and said, it's Mezuyafim. It's forged because it was obviously copied. All the paper is the same size, all the handwriting is the same handwriting. And the Rebbe speculates as to the origin of the Gniza. And the speculation is that the Heilige Ruzhner Rebbe, Sol Ruzhner, was Meisa Nefesh for Kisvei Kodesh. He had a lot of money, the Ruzhner. Ruzhner had a lot of money. Ruzhner was a tzaddik Eli, was Isha Likim Kodesh. He had a lot of money, like Yosef Tzaddik had a lot of money, you understand? And he bought Ksavim at any price. And he collected an unbelievable collection of Ksavim. And then he was arrested and put in jail. And he was afraid that they would confiscate his Ksavim. So he made copies, and he allowed the government to take the copies. And the ness is, the originals are lost, the copies we have. The Russian government saved these copies for close to 100 years, and then was discovered. And the Rebbe writes to this man, he says, you didn't see all the letters in the Geniza, I did. And in the letters of the Geniza, this Seydis HaTorah, this Shemus, in Yom of Kabbalah Maisis, there's no way this could be forged because only the biggest maven could even begin to understand what Dorten is. You can't bluff Shemis and Kabbalah. You can't make up Shemis and Kabbalah. The Rebbe Rashab and the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Mavinim, and they said, this is Kiddush Kadosh. Anyway, so the story goes that when this Geniza was discovered, there was a rich Lubavitcher Chassid, whose name was Reb Shmuel Gorari, one of the Mishpacha Gorari, were the three brothers. He bought the entire load, the whole thing. He paid a lot of money. And he brought it to the Rebbe Rashab and stuff. And but it was a ness he did that, because in 2 years the government took away his money anyway. So they got nachas. Kid said, the Rebbe took the pile of letters, it was over 200 letters, and he separated them into two. These are correct and these are mezuyef. Now I don't know what it means, mezuyef. I'm assuming it means that there's so many mistakes. The letters were full of mistakes, dates and names, and because it was done in haste. So he made two piles. These are kosher and these are not kosher. These are legitimate, these are not legitimate. Then they took these same two piles and they brought them to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe, during the lifetime of the Rebbe Nishmas Yedin, was more of a nister than the Rebbe was in the lifetime of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe was such a nister. He was like the Rebbe Marash. He tried to make it look like he's a businessman when there's a Kenish Lenin, when they're fart of Geschäft. He was the Menal Pei of them Chetmimim, and he was a tough principal like you never saw. But he tried to let the Bachrim think that there is a moderne. But obviously people knew that that's not the case. So they wanted to see how the Frierdiker Rebbe was going to react. So they took the stack of letters that the Rebbe Rashab had just divided, and they brought it to the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe made it two piles. So this is legit, this is not legit. Exactly the same as his father. Each one, exactly the same as his father. So when the Frierdiker Rebbe finished, they said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, you always tell us that you're a Pashtarid. This is mamash an open example of Ruach HaKodesh Golui. Because before we brought you the letters, we brought the letters to your father, and your father made exactly the same division and so on. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, it's not a moifis, it's not Ruach HaKodesh, it's a Pashtadach, he said. A Yid is Getlichkeit. A Chetza Shel Gedusha is Getlichkeit. Getlichkeit zu Getlichkeit Tzitzach. That was his word. A Jew is godliness. A Chetza Shel Gedusha is also has a spark. And there's a magnetism between one spark and another spark. Now, for some reason, I don't know why I think this, but if you would bring me those two piles of letters, I would not be able to use sparks of godliness as means of identification. I don't know why. I'm also a Yid, yeah, but it wouldn't work. Beim Frierdiker Rebbe das Garbet. But here we're saying fakert. A Yid whose nitzes is so concealed, so covered over. When it comes to Rashbi, yeah, when it comes to the Rebbe, the distance, the eichosdike distance, is not a mania v'ikuf klal. A Yid is getlichkeit. Rabbi Sheba Yochai is getlichkeit. Getlichkeit to getlichkeit tzitzach. To me, that's the Yom Tov of Lag Baomer. In other words, the Inyan of Lag Baomer, which is a Yom Tov now for hundreds of years, that Rubam Kukulam of Klal Yisrael celebrates. And they really don't know what they're celebrating. And they really don't know why they're celebrating it. That we go outside at night, you make fires, you sing songs, and eat marshmallows. It's because you're celebrating something that doesn't have ICS. You're celebrating something which is an Inyan Atzmi. It's Elokus. You know, I have a friend of mine who told me that he overheard a Mesnag de Shehid, a great Talmud Chacham, talking to his little son, and his son asks him, Daddy, was the Baal Shem Tov a great man? So the father says to the son, I don't know, he didn't write any Sfarim. You understand? He didn't write any Sfarim. The Baal Shem Tov didn't write any Sfarim. Zeh Sefer Tel de Sodom. The Sefer of the Baal Shem Tov is you and me, and my father and your father, and my father's father and your father's father. The Baal Shem Tov didn't write any Sfarim. He didn't write Chedushay Teira, Masech the Pesachim that you found. The Baal Shem Tov Sefer is Yiddish Neshama. And that's a Koyach Atzmi. And I think, to me, that's the Koyach of Rashbi. That's the Koyach of Pnimis HaTeira. Rashbi, the lowest Yid, has such a kinship. If you could watch videos, I mean, there's the Simchas Teira Dikid Matzav in 770. There were corners where you had the Shvens of Lubavitch, and they, oh yeah, you didn't see him, and you don't want to know where they were. But if you would try and take their place, this is my Rebbe, and I have a connection to these Dalet Amis, and I'm here, and I'm going to jump up and down, and make a shturim, I'm going to say L'chaim, and I'm going to celebrate, and I'll be together with the Rebbe. This is the Koyach of Rashbi. This is the Koyach of Rashbi, I think. Anyway, I said L'chaim v'levrocha. I didn't give you a shir. I was not in the mindset to give a shir, especially once I heard you talking of Farbrengen. I said, After this, I can't start talking about Shem Havaya and Oyer and Kaylee and what's called the Eibishter's name and what's not the Eibishter. It wasn't going to happen.
Every shir by you is the Farbrengen.
Ah?
Every shir by you is the Shibboleth Farbrengen.
It depends. Nicht allemaal. It's more so live. You know, the machine, the Bacham listen better. But what happens in a Shia, the human element that makes it the Farbrengen is not so strong. I'm missing that aspect. Bemis. Okay, l'chaim levracha. Rabbi, there's another